Yes, we're using initiatives. They're projects that are driving our performance level from the baseline to the targeted level for each of the specified objectives in the strategy, simply put, okay? So we have objectives. In this case, we want to develop a best-in-class workforce. What we're trying to do is gauge that with the percentage of employees that have completed scheduled training. Now for this notional example, that's what we're using. We're saying the baseline is 45%, the target is 95%, and the initiative is this training awareness program. The idea is that this awareness program is going to be the lever that takes us from the 45 to the 95%. Do you know that's the case? Do you know that if you just roll that program out, it'll work? You don't know that. That's why you have to measure. Okay? If you knew that it was going to work, you would just do the project and you wouldn't need to measure anything. You would just presumably get the expected benefits. Question? Oh, the nomenclature is probably not right. When you say program, it's not like a program as in one of the programs that we have here, like the high-level programs. Probably should just change the name to Training Awareness Initiative. So this is just a very low-level project. It's just a naming convention, so I apologize for the confusion. But yeah, typically a program is oftentimes a composite of a variety of initiatives at a very high level. And usually that's kind of like the programs we have here, they don't end, right? So they're ongoing. So there's a four-step process to developing good initiatives. So we talked about some of the elements of the initiative, so we want to talk about a set of steps to help us come up with and manage ultimately good initiatives. So always starts where, right? On the strategy map with our strategic objectives and our measures, as we talked about in the last module. You want to look at the range of performance gaps where we are today relative to the target for each of the objectives on the map. So if you don't have baselines and targets set, it's hard to determine what the scope or the range of the performance gap is. You want to understand all the existing initiatives that are occurring in your organization. You want to capture those and profile them in something like a business case, which you'll see here shortly. And then you want to get them into this kind of pile, if you will, almost like a portfolio, and then align them back to your strategy and then rationalize based upon your resources the ones that sort of come out on the top, the ones that you're actually going to actively manage. So you may end up taking steps to push some off or delay some or actually terminate some because they don't align back to the most significant gaps on your strategy. Does that make sense? Now we'll walk through some examples here, but again, understand what the strategy says, understand where the performance gaps are, capture and profile all the initiatives that are ongoing along with any ones that are new, and then align them back to your portfolio and manage them effectively. Go ahead, click ahead one time. So in this little diagram here, what you see on the left-hand side is all the objectives, right? You see the measures, you see the baseline and the target. So objective, measure, baseline, target should give me a sense as a manager of where the most significant performance gaps are. And that's just depicted by this colorization here on the right-hand side. So obviously in this objective 3 is where you have the most significant performance gap. So that might be the candidate for the initial initiative, right? That might be the one that I want to target, where I want to improve first. Now, does that have to be the case? No, but it would probably be something I would certainly look at in my organization. Like we talked before lunch about, the security division processing people. That might be the most significant challenge you face in your organization. I don't know, but that would be, if it were, that'd be the candidate for probably the most significant initiative to close that performance gap. So we've understood the objectives, we got ahead and identified the performance gaps. Now what we want to do is capture and create business cases. Do you guys use business cases? I see some half smiles. We'd like to use business cases. We've thought about using business cases. They seem like a good idea. Have you ever filled them out? Yeah? Why don't people fill them out more regularly, do you think? It's not a trick question. It's probably somewhere on the latter too. No one demands it, and they're hard to do, and they take a lot of time. I've never walked in an organization as a consultant and gone, look at all these business cases. There's just way too many. Too many business cases for me to evaluate objectively. I mean, usually there's very few business cases, and it's harder to figure out what people are working on. So normally what you want to do is, think about your division, not the FBI necessarily overall, but, get your arms around what are all the major initiatives that are occurring here. What's the name? What's the description? When did it start? Who's the owner? who's the executive sponsor, if there is one, which objectives on the map does it link to? Here's some financial information. This is more private sector oriented, but pick the information, cost data, what have you. Revenue increase, cost reduction, cost to implement, and then what are the high-level milestones? Now this is just kind of a snapshot. You can add other fields. There's no right set of fields necessarily. But what does this do for us? Imagine what, aside from taking a lot of time to complete, I get that. What's the value of doing this if you were to go out and spend the time over a couple weeks to actually capture and profile and develop business cases for each of the initiatives that were underway in your organization? What would the value be? Should give you a sense of where you're going to get some payback or return on your investment. Good. What else? It forces you to document the milestones to make sure the project is or isn't on track. And there's probably there would ideally be a more detailed project plan for each of these. Anything else?
It formalizes the actual initiative.
It formalizes the initiative. It forces whomever is working on it to actually think through, okay, what's the benefit? Why are we doing this? What's the value? And that can be, in and of itself, very illustrative in organizations. Oftentimes, managers aren't aware of the full range of things that are, I thought we stopped that. Didn't we stop that? I mean, I said like 8 months ago not to work on that anymore. We're still working on that? What's the problem with these kind of below-the-radar initiatives? I know they don't happen here, but I mean, they consume resources that could be deployed elsewhere. I've got 2 people working, on behind the scenes on these projects or initiatives. They're not working on something else that might be a higher priority. So again, finite resources, time, money, and attention. So we want to make sure we focus those. So use business cases. Now, once you've created or profiled your business cases, then what you can do is sort of test alignment and come up with a prioritization. So what you see in this graphic is as follows. On this horizontal axis on the top, you have objectives. So those are basically bubbles. This is just a notional example. And on the vertical axis, you actually have the names of specific projects or initiatives. So what do those black boxes in the middle tell us then? If I've got objectives on the horizontal and projects arrayed on the vertical, what does that tell me? It shows me where the linkages are. So in this detailed customer study, I know this project impacts 3 objectives. So that's an initial cut. It's good. I'm working on something that's aligned back to the objectives. But that in and of itself doesn't necessarily tell me it's a good initiative. It could cost tons of money, et cetera. So what we've done over here on the right-hand side is we've put a set of, I'll call them attributes or characteristics with which we can help rank the initiative. So I've selected here, and there's no right answer. I've picked cost, time to complete, interdependencies, and risk. And I've given them a scoring of 1 to 3. 1 being less favorable than 2, which is less favorable than 3. So the way you would think about this is, the open innovation, it's a low cost, so do you think low cost should get it a higher or a lower score? Higher scores are better, think about it. So lower cost will give it a higher score, it gets a 3. Okay, so meaning we're going to have to spend less money to get the benefit. Time to complete, it's going to be, so the faster it is going to take to get done, the higher the score. On interdependency, it comes out kind of in the middle. It's not, it's somewhat interdependent, but not highly interdependent. And then it's moderate level of risk, relative to something that might be more risky. In this case, it comes out as one of the higher scored initiatives. So what you see on the right-hand side is just a scoring, and then ultimately a first cut at a prioritization. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what this does is it helps me as a senior leader determine whether, which of these should probably be the one that I do first. Does that make sense? Go ahead. But now the one thing is you get to pick 2 things to that point. First off, that if these are high-level, bona fide strategic initiatives, it makes sense that they're going to be risky in time, so that makes sense intuitively. But you also get to pick the characteristics in how you rank. That's based on your management approach. Now, I don't think the director is necessarily saying, if it's super risky, let's give that a high score. If it's going to cost tons of money, let's go with it. I mean, I suspect he's not doing that.
I think these critical kind of cross pieces that if he didn't adopt them, then maybe they wouldn't get the leverage at either the division or the branch level.
That's probably right. That's probably right. And again, so you pick the characteristics and the criteria rather that you want to use for your organization to rank them. That's a choice you make. And even that being said, even if you use this, it's not the answer. This doesn't give you the answer where it's like, "Proop," it spits out, oh, here's the ones we'll do. It's just a kind of a swag. The management team has to sit down and actually make a final determination, right? You're not going to take the answer off of this little sort of calculation. You're going to actually go back and go like, well, what are we really trying to do?
Maybe another column.
Okay. Absolutely. So that, again, if you want to have another column or you want to take other ones out, you get to pick the criteria. The key is to pick the criteria before you start ranking so that you don't retrofit the initiatives to the criteria. Yeah, well, people will do that. Like, this one looks risky, so let's pick, we're not going to use risk. So organizations will sometimes, well, not inadvertently do that on purpose. But the whole point is to figure out, what are we trying to accomplish objectives-wise? What are our projects that are initiatives that are ongoing? What's the intersection? And then some mechanism to rank them so that you can start to get a sense of, yeah, this one looks more important than another.